Greenwood, was a district in Tulsa, Oklahoma. As one of the most successful and wealthiest African-American communities in the United States during the early 20th century, it was popularly known as America's Black Wall Street until the Tulsa Race Riot of 1921. The riot was one of the most devastating race riots in history, and it destroyed the once thriving Greenwood community. The roots. Many African Americans moved to Oklahoma in the years before and after 1907, which is the year Oklahoma became a state. Oklahoma represented change and provided a chance for African Americans to get away from slavery and the harsh racism of their previous homes. Most of them traveled from the states in the South, where racism was very prevalent, and Oklahoma offered hope and provided all people with a chance to start over. They traveled to Oklahoma by wagons, horses, trains, and even on foot. Many of the African Americans who traveled to Oklahoma had ancestors who could be traced back to Oklahoma. A lot of the settlers were relatives of African American slaves who traveled on foot with the 5 civilized tribes along the Trail of Tears. Others were the descendants of runaway slaves who had fled to Indian Territory in an effort to escape lives of oppression. When Tulsa became a booming and rather well-noted town in the United States, the residents and government attempted to leave out important aspects of the city. Many people considered Tulsa to be 2 separate cities, rather than one city of united communities. The white residents of Tulsa referred to the area north of the Frisco Railroad tracks as Little Africa and other derogatory names. They were threatened by the success of the African American community and worried that the community might continue to grow. This community later acquired the name Greenwood, and in 1921 it was home to about 10,000 African American men, women, and children. Greenwood was centered on a street known as Greenwood Avenue. This street was important because it ran north for over a mile from the Frisco Railroad yards, and it was one of the few streets that did not cross through both black and white neighborhoods. The citizens of Greenwood took pride in this fact because it was something they had all to themselves and did not have to share with the white community of Tulsa. Greenwood Avenue was home to the African American Commercial District, with many red brick buildings. These buildings belonged to African Americans, and they were thriving businesses, including grocery stores, clothing stores, barber shops, and much more. Greenwood was one of the most affluent communities and became known as Black Wall Street. During the oil boom of the 1910s, the area of northeast Oklahoma around Tulsa flourished, including the Greenwood neighborhood, which came to be known as the Negro Wall Street, now commonly referred to as the Black Wall Street. The area was home to several prominent black businessmen, many of them multimillionaires. Greenwood boasted a variety of thriving businesses that were very successful up until the Tulsa Race Riot. Not only did African Americans want to contribute to the success of their own shops, but also the racial segregation laws prevented them from shopping anywhere else other than Greenwood. Following the riots, the area was rebuilt and thrived until the 1960s, when desegregation allowed blacks to shop in areas that were restricted before. Greenwood was a very religiously active community. At the time of the riot, there were more than a dozen African American churches and many Christian youth organizations and religious societies. In northeastern Oklahoma, as elsewhere in America, the prosperity of minorities emerged amidst racial and political tension. The Ku Klux Klan made its first major appearance in Oklahoma shortly before the worst race riot in history. It is estimated that there were about 3,200 members of the Klan in Tulsa in 1921. O.W. Gurley, founder. Prior to the turn of the century, O.W. Gurley, a wealthy African-American landowner from Arkansas, traversed the United States to participate in the Oklahoma Land Run of 1889. The young entrepreneur had just resigned from a presidential appointment under President Grover Cleveland in order to strike out on his own. In 1906, Gurley moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, where he purchased 40 acres of land, which was only to be sold to colored. This notion was unheard of at the time. Amongst his first businesses was a rooming house which was located on a dusty trail near the railroad tracks. This road was given the name Greenwood Avenue, named for the city in Mississippi. The area became extremely popular amongst African American migrants fleeing the oppression in Mississippi. They would find refuge in his building, as the racial persecution from the South was non-existent on Greenwood Avenue. In addition to his rooming building, he built 3 two-story buildings, 5 residences, and bought an 80-acre farm in Rogers County. Gurley also founded what is today Vernon AME Church. Gurley's implementation of colored segregation set the Greenwood boundaries of separateness that exist to this day: Pine Street to the north, Archer Street, and the Frisco Tracks to the south, Cincinnati Street on the west, and Lansing Street on the east. The segregation is pronounced in subtle landmarks. South of Archer, Greenwood Avenue does not exist in white neighborhoods. Gurley's prominence and wealth were short-lived. In a matter of moments he lost everything. During the race war, the Gurley Hotel at 112 North Greenwood, the street's first commercial enterprise, valued at $55,000, was lost. And with it, Brunswick Billiard Parlor and Doc Eastman and Hughes Cafe. Gurley also owned a 2-story building at 119 N Greenwood. It housed Carter's Barber Shop, Hardy Rooms, a pool hall, and cigar store. All were reduced to ruins. By his account and court records, he lost nearly $200,000 in the 1921 race war. Because of his leadership role in creating this self-sustaining exclusive black community, it had been rumored that Gurley was lynched by a white mob and buried in an unmarked grave. However, according to the memoirs of Greenwood pioneer V.C. Franklin, My Life and an Era, published in 1997, Gurley exiled himself to California. The founder of the most successful African-American community of his time, vanished from the history books and drifted into obscurity. He is now being honored in a recently released documentary film called Before They Die: The Road to Reparations for the 1921 Tulsa Race Riot Survivors.